Where are the original papers? Julian said he specifically needs the originals to make the forgery look convincing. My daughter-in-law's voice came through the phone, cold as ice, while the image of my own son rummaging through my drawers played out on the screen. They thought the security camera was broken, but they were wrong. My name is Clara Jenkins. I'm a 72-year-old widow from the small town of Willow Creek, and I had just stumbled upon the fact that the children I love most in this world were planning to ruin my life. They didn't know I was watching, and they certainly didn't know that the fight had only just begun. What can a single mother do when faced with the cruelest betrayal of all? Well, stick with me on this journey, and we'll find out together. It all started 3 days ago, thanks to a bit of forgetfulness that I now thank the good Lord for. The security camera system in my house had been on the fritz for weeks, leaving me feeling a little uneasy. A 72-year-old woman living alone after my husband passed is just too easy a target. My son, Liam, and his wife, Tiffany, kept insisting they should move in with me to take better care of Mom. It sounds so ironic now thinking back on those words. They controlled every part of my life, from grocery shopping to doctor's appointments, so much so that the thought of calling a repairman myself to fix the cameras completely slipped my mind. I just plain forgot to tell them. And that little lapse in memory was the very thing that saved my life. This morning, after Liam left for a supposed job interview and Tiffany went off to the supermarket, I decided to check if the cameras were working. The technician had installed an app on my phone that let me see my whole house in real time. I was going to put it off, but something just nudged me to do it right then and there. I opened the app and a chillingly clear image of my living room appeared. My heart just about stopped. Liam and Tiffany hadn't gone anywhere. They were right there in my living room. All of my important documents were scattered across the coffee table like it was their own personal office. Liam was holding my file of important papers, the one I always kept locked in my bedroom desk drawer. Tiffany was holding up page after page, examining them in the light from the window. They moved with the familiarity of people who had done this many times before. Where are the original papers? Tiffany's voice echoed through the phone speaker, cold and calculating. Julian said he specifically needs the originals to make the forgery look convincing. Julian Thorne. The name sent a shiver down my spine. He was some slick lawyer Liam had met at a bar, a shady character I never had a good feeling about. Now I understood why. They have to be here, Liam answered, his voice thick with frustration. Mom is so meticulous with this stuff. She's almost obsessive about keeping everything organized. That word, obsessive, dripped from his lips like a curse. The very neatness and care he used to praise me for was now being used against me. Tiffany walked closer to the window, holding up a document. Look at this, Liam. According to the latest appraisal, this house is worth over $500,000. Julian was right. It's worth the effort. The house I had bought with the sweat of 30 years of hard work. The house where I raised Liam all by myself after his father died from a sudden heart attack when he was just 15. The house I planned to leave to him as a legacy, not as a prize for him to steal while I was still alive and kicking. Once we have the deed in our names, Tiffany went on, we can sell it and move her somewhere smaller. A one-bedroom apartment is more than enough for her final years. My final years. They talked about me as if I were already gone, just an obstacle to be cleared on their path to riches. Truth is, I'd had my suspicions for a while. Tiffany, with her syrupy, sweet, fake smile, was always asking about my finances. Mother Clara, have you thought about selling this big house? It's too much for you all alone. We could invest the money or get you a nice condo, no stairs to climb. Liam was always complaining about his debts, about how hard it was to find a job. Yet I'd occasionally find credit card bills for luxury items they tried to hide. It was because of those little doubts that a few months back I secretly retrieved my old smartphone. I told them it was broken and useless, but in reality, I had installed a simple voice recording app. Whenever I had the chance, I'd discreetly place it in the living room under a sofa cushion and turned it on. I thought I was just being cautious, trying to confirm my unease, but I never imagined it would uncover such a monstrous plot. My hand trembling, I turned off the camera feed. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I stumbled back and sank into a kitchen chair. The initial shock gave way to a sharp, piercing pain. But then another feeling started to rise up, a cold, determined anger. I was not some frail old woman they could easily manipulate. I had survived the grief of losing my husband. I had raised a son on my own. I would not let them destroy me. That night, after they had gone to their room, I sat alone in the dark, pulled out the old phone, and plugged in my earphones. I needed to know everything to understand the root of this betrayal. I rewound the recordings from a few weeks back, and then I heard it. I heard the motive, something deeper and more wicked than simple greed. It was Tiffany's voice, sweet as honey but laced with venom, whispering to Liam. "You're always so soft, Liam. Have you forgotten how your mother treated your father? She promised him on his deathbed she would take care of you better than anyone. But what happened? A few years later, she married another man?" I froze. My second husband, Walter, was a kind man, but he passed away from cancer only 5 years after we were married. Liam was a grown man by then, with his own life. I never thought he saw that as a betrayal. Liam's voice came next, weak and full of resentment. "I know, but that's old news." "It's not old news at all, darling," Tiffany hissed. "She took one father from you, then brought in another man to replace him. She didn't keep her promise. She owes you. This house, this money, it's what she owes you for your lonely childhood. You have a right to it." I pulled the earbuds out, a wave of nausea rising in my throat. My daughter-in-law didn't just want my money. She wanted to poison my son's soul, turning old wounds into a weapon against his own mother. She had turned my son into a man who believed that robbing his mother was an act of justice. This evil was more twisted and cruel than anything I had seen on that camera. I hadn't just been housing a snake. I had let it inject its venom into the very son I loved most. The next day, the battle began. They waited until lunch as I sat at the dining table, pretending to read a magazine. Liam and Tiffany approached, their faces a mask of fake seriousness. Liam placed a thick stack of papers on the table. "Mom," he started, his voice dripping with false concern. "We've been thinking a lot about your future, about your financial security." I looked up, keeping my voice steady. "Oh, and what about it, dear?" Tiffany pushed the stack towards me. "A lawyer friend of Liam's helped us prepare some documents to update all your legal records. Just standard forms, nothing complicated." Of course, that lawyer friend had to be Julian Thorne. I picked up the papers, making a show of squinting at them. "Oh, the print is so small. I can't read a thing," I said, a bald-faced lie. "Let me get my glasses." I saw a flicker of impatience in Tiffany's eyes, but she quickly covered it with a smile. "That's okay, Mom. Basically, it just makes sure that if anything happens to you, both your will and the house's ownership are legally recognized. It also includes a power of attorney, so we can handle your medical and financial affairs if you're unable to." They wanted me to sign a full power of attorney. They wanted me to hand my entire life over to them. "I'm not sure I understand all this," I said, setting the papers down. "It seems awfully complicated." "Mom, it's just boring technical jargon," Liam said, pointing to a few lines marked with an X. "The important thing is that you sign here, here, and here. The lawyer said it's urgent because of some tax law changes that could affect you if we don't update this before next month. Another lie. They were backing me into a corner, using urgency and confusing terms to pressure me into signing without reading. I picked up the pen, feeling their eyes glued to me. They thought they had won. They thought the prey had walked right into the trap. I brought the tip of the pen to the first signature line, then stopped. "You know," I said, looking up at them with my most innocent expression, "I think I should take this to my own lawyer first. My eyes have been so bad lately, it's tiring to read all this." Just to be on the safe side. Silence fell over the room. I saw Liam and Tiffany exchange a look of barely concealed panic. In that moment, I saw it all. The naked greed, the failed calculation, and a rage just waiting to erupt. Tiffany was the first to regain her composure. She placed a hand on Liam's arm, a gesture that looked calming, but I knew was a silent warning. A sickeningly professional smile returned to her face. "Of course, Mom," she said, her voice like honey. "That's a very good idea. You should be careful. We only want what's best for you. Take all the time you need." Liam, though still stunned, quickly followed her lead. "That's right, Mom. There's no rush at all." They gathered the papers quickly, almost hastily, and left the dining room. But the tension they left behind hung heavy in the air. I knew this wasn't a retreat. This was them regrouping. The war had just entered a new, more dangerous phase. And I wasn't wrong. The very next day, their strategy shifted. They stopped pressuring me. Instead, they began a subtle and cruel campaign of psychological torment designed to make me doubt my own sanity. It started with small things. On Tuesday morning, Maria, the housekeeper, who'd worked for me for nearly 10 years, didn't show up. I waited until 10 and then called her. "Oh, Mrs. Jenkins," she said, sounding confused. "I'm so sorry. I thought you canceled for today. Miss Tiffany called me yesterday and said you weren't feeling well and wanted to rest." When I confronted Tiffany, she opened her eyes wide with innocence. "Mom, don't you remember? You told me yourself yesterday you were feeling a bit tired and wanted to save a little money. You said you'd do the light tidying up yourself. Your memory seems to be slipping a bit lately." She said it with such false concern, but in her eyes I saw a glint of victory. Then came my dentist appointment. Liam had promised to take me, but when I was ready and waiting by the door, he looked at me with surprise. "The dentist? Today, Mom? I'm sure you told me it was for next Thursday. You should check your calendar." I opened my planner. The Wednesday appointment had been crossed out and rewritten for Thursday in an unfamiliar hand. I knew it wasn't my writing. They started cutting off my support systems. The weekly grocery delivery was canceled because our car needs to go in for maintenance. My trips to my book club were postponed because Liam has a last-minute interview. They were slowly tightening the noose, turning my home into a comfortable prison and me into an isolated inmate whose memories and plans could be twisted at their whim. The worst part was how they planted seeds of doubt with those around me. That afternoon, while I was pruning my roses, my neighbor Susan walked by. "Clara, you look a little tired," she said, her voice full of pity. "Tiffany was telling me you've been a bit forgetful lately. You have to take care of yourself. At our age, our memory is a precious thing." I felt the blood rush to my face. They weren't just attacking me. They were destroying my reputation, building a narrative of a confused, senile old woman so that no one would believe me. All I could do was offer a weak smile and thank Susan for her concern, feeling like an invisible wall was being built between me and the outside world. The peak of their cruelty came on Friday night. I happened to walk past their bedroom and heard Liam's voice on the phone. The door was slightly ajar, and I couldn't stop myself from pausing, holding my breath to listen. "Yes, Dr. Sharma." I heard the name of my family doctor who had cared for me for the last 15 years. My heart clenched. I'm calling because I'm very worried about my mother, Clara Jenkins. Yes, lately her behavior has been very erratic. A pause. I could picture Dr. Sharma on the other end, her brow furrowed with concern. She's starting to have paranoid delusions, Liam continued, his voice full of fake anguish. She believes we're plotting against her, that we want to steal her assets. She's even talked about us wanting to put her in a nursing home. I know, it sounds crazy, but it's getting worse. She's forgetting things, mixing up her appointments, and sometimes she accuses us of the most unbelievable things. We're afraid she's no longer competent to care for herself. I had to lean against the wall to keep from collapsing. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. This was it. This was their plan. If they couldn't trick me into signing the papers, they would use the law to prove I was mentally incompetent. Then, as my only next of kin, they would easily be appointed by the court as my legal guardians. They would get everything without needing my signature. I backed away, my heart pounding like a drum. I ran to my room and locked the door. I sat on my bed, shaking in the dark. For a moment, I actually doubted myself. Was it possible I had imagined it all? Was I really becoming senile? The voices of Tiffany, Liam, and Susan echoed in my head. But then my eyes fell on the old smartphone on my nightstand. I remembered what I had heard. It was real. The anger surged back, extinguishing the fear. I would not let them win. The next morning, after Liam and Tiffany had gone out, I made my move. My hand was still shaking as I dialed the number for Dr. Anya Sharma's office. Dr. Sharma's office, how can I help you? Please, I need to speak with Dr. Sharma, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This is Clara Jenkins. Mrs. Jenkins, the doctor is with a patient. Would you like to leave a message? Please, I pleaded, just tell her it's an emergency, a real emergency. I'll hold. A few minutes later, Anya's familiar, warm voice was on the line. Clara, what's wrong? Liam called me yesterday. I was just about to call you. I took a deep breath. Anya, I need to see you, alone, as soon as possible. What my son told you, it's not true. I'm in terrible trouble. There was a short, professional silence on the other end. Then she said, her voice serious, Clara, do you feel safe at home? That question, so direct, broke down all my defenses. The tears started to fall. No, I whispered, I'm not safe. All right, Anya said, her tone decisive. Can you get to my office at 3 o'clock this afternoon? I'll tell my staff it's an unscheduled checkup. Don't say anything to Liam and Tiffany. That afternoon, I told them I needed to go to the pharmacy for a few things. I took a taxi to Anya's clinic. Sitting in her private office, I told her everything. About the camera, about their plan, about Tiffany's poisonous words and her manipulation, about the gaslighting campaign, about Liam's phone call. I spoke through tears, but my voice was clear and coherent. I wasn't a senile old woman. I was a woman fighting for her life. Anya listened patiently, without interrupting. Her intelligent brown eyes watched me with a look of sympathy and sharp focus. When I finished, she nodded slowly. Clara, I've been your doctor for 15 years. Your medical history is perfectly normal. Your last cognitive exam showed excellent results. What you're describing doesn't sound like paranoia. It sounds like the reaction of a perfectly sane person to a very real threat. For the first time in days, I felt like someone believed me. A huge weight was lifted from my shoulders. Now, we have to act quickly and carefully, Anya continued. I'm going to give you a full cognitive assessment right now and write up a detailed, legally valid medical report. But you can't fight this alone. You need professionals. She picked up her phone. I'm going to refer you to 2 people. The first is Sarah Reynolds, a lawyer who specializes in elder protection law. She's the best. The second is Detective Miller, a retired private investigator. He's discreet and effective. That evening, I returned home feeling completely different. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by a plan, by a glimmer of hope. The next day, I secretly met with Sarah and Miller at Sarah's office. Sarah, a strong and decisive woman, laid out the legal strategy. Miller, a quiet man with sharp eyes, handled the tactics. "Mrs. Jenkins," Miller said, "they need irrefutable proof. Your old recordings are helpful, but we need something more direct. We need them to admit to the plan themselves, again." He opened a briefcase. Inside were devices that looked like they were straight out of a spy movie. A button that was actually a micro camera. A brooch that was a high-quality audio recorder. "Are you willing to wear these?" he asked. "And more importantly, are you brave enough to set a trap?" Sarah added, "Here's the plan. You're going to pretend to give in. You'll tell them you've thought it over, and you've decided to sign the papers to keep the peace in the family. But you have one condition. You want to meet with their lawyer, Julian Thorne, in person, so he can explain everything clearly. We need to get all of them in the same room." "Thorne's office will be secretly wired by us," Miller concluded. "Every word, every action will be recorded. And you'll have to skillfully guide the conversation, provoke them into exposing their own conspiracy." I looked at the tiny devices on the table. My heart pounded. This was a huge gamble. It required me to put on the performance of a lifetime in front of the very people who wanted to destroy me. But as I looked at the confident faces of Sarah and Miller, I knew I could do it. Returning home that evening, a strange sense of calm washed over me. When Liam and Tiffany asked where I'd been, I just sighed and said I had been doing a lot of thinking. "I'm tired," I told them on Sunday evening as we sat in the living room. "I don't want our family to be under this stress anymore. Maybe you were right. I'm getting old, and maybe I do need help." I saw a flash of triumph in Tiffany's eyes, but she quickly hid it. "Oh, Mother Clara," she said, her voice full of feigned sympathy. "We just want what's best for you." "I know," I replied weakly. "I'll sign the papers." Liam came over and gave me a hug. It was a fake, hollow embrace. I had to fight the urge to shudder. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered. "This is the right decision." "But," I added, taking a step back, "I have one condition. I want to meet with your lawyer, Mr. Thorne, in person. I want him to explain every single clause to me so I can have peace of mind. I don't want any more misunderstandings." Liam and Tiffany looked at each other. I could see the gears turning in their heads. Taking me to see Thorne was a risk, but the prospect of getting my voluntary signature was too tempting to resist. Finally, Tiffany nodded. "Of course, Mom. That's a perfectly reasonable request. We'll set up a meeting for Tuesday afternoon." Tuesday afternoon arrived. Detective Miller, playing the part of an old family friend, came to my house that morning just to visit. In reality, he was there to help me put on the recording devices. The pearl brooch my late husband had given me was now fitted with a tiny microphone. The top button of my cardigan was a camera. I felt like a spy in my own tragedy. "Stay calm, Mrs. Jenkins," Miller said quietly. "Just be yourself. Ask questions, act confused, and let them hang themselves with their own words." Julian Thorne's office was in a fancy part of town, but the atmosphere inside was cold and sterile. Thorne was a man in his 50s with slicked back hair and a greasy smile that never reached his eyes. I knew that Miller and his team had been here the night before, and the room was now fully equipped with surveillance devices. We sat around a polished mahogany table. Thorne spread the documents out in front of me. "Mrs. Jenkins," he began in a condescending tone, "Liam and Tiffany explained that you wanted me to clarify a few points. I'd be happy to." He started explaining the clauses, using complex legal terms and glossing over the most important parts. I listened intently, pretending to frown and look confused. "Wait a minute, Mr. Thorne," I interrupted when he got to the part about power of attorney over my property. "Does this mean Liam and Tiffany could sell my house without my permission?" Technically, Thorne said, avoiding my gaze, it's a contingency clause for a situation where you might no longer be of sound mind to make major financial decisions. It's all for your own good. But who decides when I'm no longer of sound mind? I asked, looking directly at Liam. Liam shifted uncomfortably. Mom, that's just a formality. No, I want to know, I pressed. Will you be the ones to decide? Will you tell the doctors, the courts, that your mother is senile, that she's paranoid, just so you can have total control over her property? A thick silence filled the room. Thorne started to look nervous. I turned to Tiffany. And after you sell the house, what then? You already have a one-bedroom apartment picked out for me somewhere, don't you? Someplace affordable for my final years. I quoted her exact words that I'd heard through the camera. Tiffany's face went pale. What are you talking about? She stammered. I'm talking about your conspiracy, I said, my voice no longer trembling. It was strong and steely now. The conspiracy to forge my will, to trick me into signing papers, and when that didn't work, to try and have me declared insane? All for a $500,000 house? This is absurd, Thorne cut in, trying to regain control. Mrs. Jenkins, perhaps your son was right. You are having paranoid delusions. I looked at Liam, my eyes welling with tears, but my voice was firm. Liam, I said, my voice full of pain, your father, before he died, he took my hand and said, promise me you'll take care of our boy better than I ever could. I tried, Liam. I did everything for you. I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. But I never thought you would use my sacrifice against me. You let her, I glanced at Tiffany, poison your mind with lies that I betrayed your father, that I owe you some kind of debt. What debt, Liam? The debt of a mother's unconditional love? Liam was speechless. He just stared at me, his face a mask of confusion and guilt. But Tiffany wasn't. Her fear had turned to fury. That's enough, she screamed, jumping to her feet. Yes, we planned it all. You're a stupid old woman, and you deserve this. He, she pointed at Liam, is too weak to do anything on his own, but I'm not. That house should be ours, and we will get it, one way or another. Including hiring Julian Thorne for $25,000 to forge the documents, right? I asked calmly. How did you know that? Thorne stammered, his face as white as a sheet. Just then, the office door flew open. Detective Miller walked in, followed by 2 uniformed police officers and my lawyer, Sarah Reynolds. Julian Thorne, Liam Jenkins, and Tiffany Jenkins. Miller's voice boomed with authority. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, financial elder abuse, and forgery. The shock on their faces was a sight I will never forget. Tiffany let out a wild scream. Thorne slumped into his chair like a puppet with its strings cut. Liam just stood there, looking at me, his eyes filled with an indescribable mix of fear, regret, and hatred. As the police put him in handcuffs, he looked at me and said, his voice trembling, "This is what you owe me." I looked him straight in the eye. No, Liam, this is what you owe yourself. You chose this path. 3 months later, the trial was over. With the undeniable evidence from the audio and video recordings, all 3 were found guilty. Tiffany and Julian Thorne received heavy prison sentences. Liam, thanks to his late-in-the-day remorse and my testimony about Tiffany's manipulation, received a lighter sentence, but he still had to pay for his actions behind bars. I sold the house in Willow Creek. It held too many painful memories. I bought a lovely little condo in another city, near the ocean. I started a new life. I joined a painting class, I take long walks on the beach every morning, and I've made friends with some kind neighbors. Sometimes, in the quiet afternoons, I still think about Liam. The pain of a mother losing her son never really goes away. But I don't regret what I did. I didn't just protect my property. I protected my dignity, my sanity, and my right to live out my final years in peace. I learned a valuable lesson. A mother's love is boundless, but a woman's self-respect has its limits. And sometimes, to truly save yourself, you have to be willing to let go of what you once thought was most precious. I am Clara Jenkins. I am 72 years old, and at long last, I am free.